Alrighty guys, welcome back. We're back for our second episode of 2024. If you haven't realized by now, we are dropping these episodes fortnightly now instead of weekly, but we still will be recording pretty regularly, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for the new episodes. Today we are super excited because we have our second guest on the Empower podcast. Today we have Ryan Moresby-White. Ryan is a 27-year-old Australian from South Africa who has gone from a depressed business owner in the construction industry to living a purpose-driven life. He's the founder of the Inspired Project Coaching Institute, a personal development company for people lacking direction and fulfillment, who are disconnected from their true core power, struggling in relationships, and who are unclear on their true life's purpose, to awakening their true power and potential, living their most inspired life each and every day. Through the embodiment of the masculine and feminine energy, healing past trauma, and doing the deep inner work, his mission is to educate others and create a safe space for people to awaken their true power and potential and become true leaders of their own lives, and therefore the world in doing so, changing the future generations to come and raising the level of consciousness of the planet. So welcome, Ryan. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
How was the drive down from Sunny Coast this morning?
It was good. It felt good to be coming back down this way. You know, this is like basically where things really kicked off for me. So yeah, after living in Bali for a little bit and then coming back this year, it's been really beautiful to come down here for the weekend and connect with you two beautiful humans as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, we did a episode late last year on masculine and feminine energy, and that's primarily like the topic that we want to cover for our audience today. But we'll get to know you a little bit better to start off with. It sounds like you've gone through your own journey over the past however many years. I'd love to know, like, what was the moment that you kind of went, things had to change?
I still remember it very, very vividly. As you heard, like I was a carpenter in the construction industry and I had a successful business at a young age, at 21 years old, managing multi-million-dollar architecturally designed homes. And I was in this void of just living this life that was so unaligned with who I truly am. And at 21 years old, I had this business. From the outside looking in, like it looked like I had it all. Like I was an athlete at the time. I grew up racing motocross. So I was competing, had this business and just doing it all at a young age. And I was just absolutely burnt out in every way possible. And not just physically burnt out, but like my soul was tired from trying to uphold this person who I thought I needed to be. And that's a big journey that I've been on there in itself is removing those masks and really coming back home to who I truly am and awakening that. And it got to the point where there was a period of time where I was so unhappy, so depressed and so unfulfilled, yet externally I was doing so well. My outlet at that time was training. So I was in the fitness industry for a while and being an athlete, I would just punish myself in the gym. And that was my outlet of what was really going on within. And it got to the point where there was a period of time where I was so depressed that I considered for a couple months different ways that I could leave this earth and that it would be far less painful to leave than stay. And it took for me to step out of the picture. Right? Like when we're in the picture, like we can't see the picture. So it took me to step out, and what that looked like was removing myself from my environment and went away to Thailand for 3 weeks over Christmas and really got to get a bird's eye view of the life that I created for myself. And I made a decision. I was, sitting on the beach. My brother was next to me and I just made a decision in that moment that I am never not going to put my happiness first ever again. And in that moment, I decided to completely step away from the career that I'd built. And we got back from that holiday and I put all my tools in the shed and closed the door, and they literally is still there today at Dad's house. about $50,000+ worth of tools, like just sitting there. And that was the first time I actually listened to what my heart wanted. And that was really the beginning of my journey, was listening to that for the first time. And what flowed from that has been absolutely magic. And after that, I then pursued the very thing that I was told I couldn't do, or that you couldn't make money in, or that it was a waste of time. And I literally have messages on my phone from some builders and stuff that I worked with, and they literally said, like, you're wasting your time and the skills that you have. Like, it's a shame that you're stepping away. And I had to go against all of that, but I knew that I was following something that was far greater than what I could see through my eyes. And this is what I call insight versus eyesight. It was listening to this instead of what I was seeing, and making decisions based on what I was seeing in my reality. So following that, I jumped into the fitness industry because I wanted to coach and help people. And I always wanted to do that from a little boy. And I really pursued that. And I knew the fitness industry was a stepping stone for me to really create lasting change and impact in people's lives. And I knew that it would be through doing the deep work, but that was just a stepping stone. So for about 5 years, I was a personal trainer on the gym floor, training high-level athletes and business owners all around the coast, in Brisbane, online. And it's probably the last, I would say, 2 years, I've been all in on the masculine and feminine embodiment work, because that's been the biggest catalyst for my life. And the people that I've been able to impact all around the world from this work has been phenomenal. And it comes back to a lot of the inner child wounds that I'm sure we're going to get into. So that's a bit of in a nutshell, my journey over the last 7 or 8 years. So
Yeah, that's a pretty inspiring story. It's amazing how you took yourself from such a dark place into such a positive space. And I think it can be really hard for people to break free from that and do what you said, which is like step out and like take a look at how their life is actually being lived and how they want to live it, and like make that change. It's so big and scary. And I know you talk a lot about finding your purpose and how to uncover your purpose. And I love that you use the fitness industry as a stepping stone for that. And I think a lot of people do. I know like Loz was in the fitness industry. Now she's doing that mindset confidence coaching. Personally, I also went into the fitness industry because I wanted to help people in so many more ways than just changing their body. I'm still in the fitness industry, but I use that as a tool to help people change so much more than just their body, as I said. So how would you recommend people go about uncovering their purpose? Because I get that question a lot from clients.
I have a more of a deep approach to this than most, I guess, people I've heard explain discovering your purpose. And this is just based on my experience and my embodiment. And most people think that your purpose is something that you find that is outside of you. And what our purpose truly is, when we come back to the true essence of the soul, we are souls, energetic beings having a human experience. So that's what we are first. Knowing that the soul's absolute number one purpose is growth and evolution. So when we come back to that, knowing that our soul's purpose is growth and evolution, it's coming back to ourselves and uncovering and discovering all of the programming, the conditioning, the beliefs, and really discovering who we are and who we were at a soul level when we were born. And removing the masks, removing the person that we were shaped to be and that we decided to be from a very, very young age. And what I've really recognized through my journey is the more that I've uncovered all of the layers that I had placed on myself. And a really great analogy to explain this is the golden Buddha in Thailand, if you've ever heard about that before, is thousands of years ago, there was this big golden Buddha, thick, like solid gold. It weighs about 16 tons. And the country was being invaded. So the monks at the time covered it in mud to hide it so they wouldn't steal it. So this big pile of mud was in the monastery, right? And only about, I think it was about 50 years ago, they decided that they were going to relocate the monastery. While they were relocating it, they were shifting this big rock statue that had been in the monastery for hundreds and if not thousands of years, right? And as they shifted it, someone noticed there was like a glimmer of like a shine, and they're like, "What was that?" Like, interesting. And they saw it was gold, so they started chipping away at it, and they uncovered this 16-ton solid gold Buddha. And this is what I truly believe. What happens when we uncover all the layers of shit that we've placed on ourselves growing up, based on what we experienced as little boys or little girls, and really revealing that golden essence that we have within us, coming back to who we were born to be, not taught to be, and really being the expression of that in the world. So I believe our purpose is uncovering that first and foremost, and living a life that's in alignment with that. And then how we express that in the world is our mission. And I believe that's what our true purpose is, what most people think their purpose is. I believe our purpose is truly us at the deepest level, at our core, and then finding a way to express that into the world.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And so with, I guess, working through all the stuff that we've started to like believe that we are and we aren't necessarily truly at our core, does that come down to the inner child wounds and patterning that we have from past trauma and things like that?
As humans, we are wired for mother and father. And it just so happens to be that they are the first representations and role models and experience of the masculine and feminine energy. So this is why it tends to always lead back to the inner child wounds. And this is the power of healing the masculine and feminine, is because healing the masculine and feminine energy at its core is coming back to your experience with it as a little boy or little girl. And when we're children, the world revolves around us. It has to. We are egocentric, and we have to be for our survival, because if mum isn't there and if dad isn't there, we die. And that's how we're wired. So when we don't get that consistent love and care and attention and affection and motherly and fatherly energy that we need as a little boy or little girl, as I said, we're very egocentric, and as humans, we need to make meaning of things. So things make sense. So we can actually, our brain can comprehend what's happening. So we just make some meaning about what we experienced growing up, and we make some core decisions and core beliefs about ourselves. For example, speaking from my past experience and the people that I've really been able to help navigate this, is from the age of 4. For example, my parents moved from South Africa to Australia together. And when they got here, Dad worked his ass off 7 days a week to provide for us, being in this country, right? Mum stayed at home and looked after us, and their relationship started to move apart. Then my little sister came into the world, and there was so much going on in their life and their relationship dynamic that their love and attention started to pull away from me as a little boy. And as a little 4-year-old boy experiencing that, knowing that the world revolves around me in that time, or at least I think it does and feel it does, I made some core decisions and beliefs about myself that, well, obviously, who I am is not good enough to be loved. So I must become someone other than I am. And that was the very, very first time I stepped away from myself at the age of 4. And then, I'm not sure if you know, but with identity, we spend our whole life reaffirming back what we truly believe about ourselves and our self-image to reaffirm what we believe to be true about ourselves, because that's what's safe for our nervous system. Yeah. So we go through life and we create and we experience and we attract people and opportunities into our life to reflect back that core belief as to what we believe to be true about ourselves. So a lot of the wounding and trauma that I've experienced throughout my life has literally just been a thread of what I decided when I was 4 years old, based on the love I didn't get from mum and dad.
Yeah, I have done a lot of therapy over the last few years regarding inner child wounds and a lot of reading, and it's an area that I'm extremely interested in. And it's interesting you have that not good enough wound, because I very much came from the same kind of background, and for me it's shown up as it's created this high achieving personality where I've been like that in every element of my life, like sports, school, business, everything. It's always been like I have to be like the best at everything to prove my worth. And yeah, often also attracting people, I guess, that reinforce that belief that I'm not good enough because of that patterning. And it's, been a really pivotal few years for me in terms of stepping away from that through the therapy that I have been doing. I think everyone has this. It shows up so much. And I know most high achieving women that I work with, because I work with a lot of them, I know Loz is very similar. We probably all have that I'm not good enough narrative, because what are we trying to prove?
Yeah. You go.
I think that leads into this masculine shield, which I know we want to talk a lot about masculine and feminine energy today. And women in that space do tend to like put up this masculine shield. So we'll talk more about that. But Loz, do you want to speak about your experience with
I was just going to say, like, I think that there can be almost like a resistance from that letting go of like the high achiever stuff, because even once you've like recognized that, okay, like maybe this high achieving way that I go about life, right, maybe it is from a like a childhood wound or a not good enough wound, that kind of thing. But I know for a long time I looked at that, and even once I maybe realized that, like, okay, when I was growing up, you know, I was really good at school, good at sport kind of thing. I think you had kind of like a similar experience. And that you learn like, okay, like that's how I get praise, right? But then even once I recognized that, I almost felt a resistance like, well, if I heal that, am I going to stop being a high achiever? Because I really like that about myself. Do you find that people kind of struggle to let it go because they feel like the wound is almost like a source of fuel?
Yeah, phenomenal question. That's the identity at play. That's the, for example, and everything you hear, if you're listening to this as well, is relating this back to relationships, business, how you show up in life, how you feel about yourself. What's familiar, and this is why we repeat patterns throughout our life. For example, we make a core decision about ourselves at a very young age, and then we find ways to reaffirm that throughout life. We find evidence to prove that that's true, because that evidence reaffirms our identity. And the ego needs an identity, right? The ego is not a bad thing. As long as you have an identity, you need an ego. It helps you understand and comprehend reality, basically. So that creates a level of safety within your nervous system. When you have a core wound of I'm not good enough, you create the identity of someone who is not good enough. And letting go of that identity is letting go of the wounding and the pain, allowing yourself to actually feel what's there, and also allowing yourself to accept the incredible traits that have come from that wound. And it's when we see both sides, and one of my mentors shared with me once that living a one-sided life and a two-sided reality is the source of all suffering. What I mean by that is only seeing one side of it. Because when we see one side of something, for example, if you're watching the video, like I'm looking on the inside of my hand, when we see one side, that's all we see. So we identify with it and we attach to it, right? So we then become attached to, well, who am I without this thing? And when we ask that question, well, who am I without this? We're now questioning, well, without this, I won't have power, which is the unfamiliar, which is the unknown, which is unsafe to your nervous system. So what's safe to your nervous system is what I know. And it's having this wound, and it's having this pain in my body and being driven by it. So people stay there. But when you see both sides of it, so flipping over the other side of my hand, I now see both sides. I see the good and the bad. I can now get out of perception. Perception is seeing through my eyes the current reality, and I get to step back and gain perspective and see both sides of it. I see the good and the bad. But basically, when you're able to see both sides, and as we're going to go into the masculine and feminine, life is always trying to come back into balance. And this is balance. It's seeing both sides. And I speak about the dark shadow and the golden shadow, the light shadow. And it's recognizing both sides of your shadow, not just the not good enough, but also the incredible parts of you as well. So it's seeing all of the things that you've gained from this wound. And it's letting go of the pain that's attached to it. Because when it comes to trauma is basically an unresolved emotion, right? For example, you experience something at the age of 4 years old and you don't allow yourself to fully feel the emotions and you stop yourself from feeling it, right? Then you hold on to that and then you store it in your body as trauma. Your body, the body keeps the score. And we keep score of all of these times that we didn't allow ourselves to actually allow the natural process of how we needed to feel that emotion fully to unfold. So allowing yourself to go into that wound and feel fully what's there. To heal it, we must fully feel it. So to go in and feel that, but then also allow yourself to reap the rewards and the incredible gifts that you gained from having that wound as well. So yeah, it's letting go of the pain and suffering, gaining the amazing things from it, and then living your life from more of a higher vibrational frequency of love and gratitude and acceptance.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really important point and something that will help a lot of people to feel okay to maybe start that journey to look back and work out like, okay, are these symptoms or behaviors like coming from a source of pain? Even if I want to keep the behaviors because I do feel like they serve me or I like that I have developed a strength out of this perhaps pain or stress, that I don't have to let go of that, but that I can start to fuel it from a better place. I know that's something that I've really tried to do and helped me to push past that resistance because I resisted it for a long time. I was like, I'd rather be in pain and a high achiever than not in pain and average.
Because who am I without pain?
Yeah.
It's an identity. Yeah.
But you can, from personal experience, start to have those strengths and traits fueled from a place of like self-love and pride almost, to be like, okay, like I can recognize that I am enough as I am right now, but I also want to keep doing all of these things, maybe just not to like such an extreme state.
Yeah.
I guess moving into more of like the masculine, feminine stuff that we've touched on a little bit. I know that they're a little bit like buzzwords at the moment, right? Like everyone on the internet, I hadn't heard the terms, until probably a couple of years ago. How would you describe masculine versus feminine?
As I said, life's always trying to come back into balance. And if you look outside in nature is always coming back to balance, right? Nature goes through seasons, and it goes through seasons for the purpose of growth and evolution. And so do we as humans. Everything is always trying to come back into balance and harmony. Look at hot, cold, positive, negative, left, right, up, down, like there is two sides to everything. And this is why I said trying to live a one-sided life in a two-sided reality is a source of most suffering. So it's being able to see the both sides of it, of the same coin. The true essence of and this is just what I believe of the masculine and feminine, is I like to explain it, breaking it down to the absolute. So knowing that everything is energy, right? An atom is made up of 99.99999% nothing, space, energy. Energy itself is the feminine. And the feminine is chaos energy. So when I explain the energy of the masculine and feminine, you can just relate this into your life, and you'll see the picture. The feminine energy is chaos energy. It's what I mean by that. There's no direction. It's fully expressed. It is energy. It moves however it wants to move. It flows however it wants to flow. It has no direction. It's fully expressed, and it's everything in this moment right now. It's the lights on, it's the fan running, it's the wind outside. And the masculine is the awareness of it. For example, the masculine is like the sky. It's the space for there to be weather. The weather is the feminine. Beautiful weather, chaos weather, stormy weather, like whatever. But it's the masculine is the safe space for there to be weather. And another way to describe this is a waterfall. And this is a great analogy for relationships. So when you look at a waterfall, the essence of the waterfall itself, like a beautiful picture of this waterfall with the water flowing over, it's this beautiful thing. Without the masculine and feminine, there is no flow of the water. So without the structure, without the direction, without the guidance, without the safe support, and then without the flow, without the water itself, without the expression of the water itself, there is no flow of the waterfall. There's no waterfall. So the masculine is the safe support and direction for the water to flow. And this is the pure essence of looking at the masculine and feminine in nature, recognizing that it's all about balance. When we look at like the Big Bang, or how Earth was created, there was energy, and then there was order and structure brought to that energy, right? The masculine and feminine. In Hindu mythology, they speak about Shiva and Shakti, the masculine and feminine gods, right? And they say that man is 100% woman, 100% man. So man or woman, it's not gender specific, gender bias. We all have masculine and feminine energy within us. We are balanced at our core with these energies. And for there to be balance, for there to be procreation of humans, there needs to be attraction, polarity, opposites, two sides. This is why men tend to have more masculine energy, women tend to have more feminine energy, so there is attraction, the positive and negative coming together. Not meaning good or bad, it's just energy, positive and negative coming together. And this is the pure essence of the beauty of sexual polarity within masculine and feminine energy. But this all starts with cultivating the balance of both of these energies within ourselves first, from an integrated, healthy place that's not wounded. For example, a woman that grows up majority of her life with the core belief that she's not good enough or worthy enough to be loved just as she is, and has dimmed her full expression, who has suppressed her voice, who has, in a way, closed her heart, picks up this masculine shield of protection and needs to be this, living in a masculine world, needs to be perceived as this certain way in order to be loved, based on society's conditioning and based on her need for survival to feel safe. As I shared with the waterfall, in order for there to be flow of the water, there needs to be the safe support for it to flow. So when a little girl doesn't experience that safety and that support for her to flow, well, she needs to then be that herself. So then she picks up this shield of protection and she steps away from her true core essence as a woman. Men do this as well. right? And this is where, I look at the fitness industry and a lot of women, and I've worked with a lot of women in the fitness industry, is they're building this masculine shield of protection physically. Yet it's an actual representation of what's happening within inside. And that's a reflection of what's happening within. And as I always share, life is not a window, it's a mirror. It is always reflecting back to us what is happening with inside, even our physical body. This is how when I work with a client, I can see their physical body and actually understand and see what's going on with inside them before even speaking to them. So there's nothing wrong with this, but it's from what place it's coming from. Because if you're living a life from this wounded part that's still trying to prove yourself and protect yourself, holding up this shield, you're not actually living from your true essence. And it's when we let go of the wounding, the pain, the trauma, the suffering we experienced growing up, we then are invited back into our true essence. And what I've noticed is when a lot of people, men and women, they start coming back to this, they start becoming less attracted to things that they were once really attracted to. Or they care less about things they once really, really cared about, especially how they look and how they're perceived. And that's what's most important to me is creating a space for people to live a life that's truly authentic to them. And when we go back and heal the little boy and the little girl and get in touch with the true essence, the golden Buddha, as I shared, of who we were born to be and who we were before we decided to be a certain way, coming back to that, we were already perfect. And who we were before we decided to be a certain way was the true essence and expression of who we are at our core, which is normally the integration of the healthy, masculine or feminine energy. It was already there. Yeah. So I know it's a bit of a tangent, but this is how I bring it from the energy and what the expression of these energies actually are into how it shows up within the body and bringing it back into balance within the body. Yeah.
I think that's a really helpful analogy, and to help people understand that they can be both, which I think is something that we've spoken about a bit before, Loz and I, because I know this is an area that is a bit newer to you, Loz, and you've said, but I really I want to be driven and ambitious, but I'm struggling to find the right balance with also being in my feminine. And this is something that I think shows up in a lot of women in our audience listening to this podcast, because we have a lot of women who do train in the gym and do bodybuilding as well. And, that's building up that, I guess, masculine shield physically. Also a lot of high performing career women or business owners, which again, it's very masculine energy driven, and it often can feed into, I think, this I don't need no man attitude, which to me is a toxic masculinity coming forward in women, right? And what I personally notice with women like this is they tend to attract the really toxic masculinity male partners because they're already so on the masculine side themselves. So they need this hyper masculine man to then kind of balance that out. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. What I found to be true is more the opposite of that. They attract the weak, suppressed, nice guy.
Yes.
Who can't
or
stand
that,
for
yeah.
anything. Yeah. And who's really lost touch with who he truly is, lacks self-worth, becomes extremely jealous in relationship, checks his partner's phone, the really insecure, nice guy that would do anything for anyone at any time and completely self-abandon himself and his core needs. And that's felt by a woman first and foremost. But bringing this into the polarity of relationships and attracting a partner or recognizing the partners that you have attracted is that opposites attract. Positive and negative work. They attract together. So the wounded feminine attracts the wounded masculine. Knowing this, it's cool. It's always about bringing it back to you. So the more you heal within yourself, the more you're going to attract healed energy into your life. But what tends to happen is that women are carrying around, because most women feel so unsafe. And it's, at personal development events, like I work with a few companies where I help co-facilitate, and every single time, raise a hand, women who here has felt unsafe in the last 24 hours, 90% of them put their hand up. Like, most women feel so unsafe walking around life. And they've felt the need that they have to pick up this masculine shield of protection. And when two positives come together, there's no attraction. So there must be the opposites. So then they attract either the over-controlling, overbearing, manipulative, over-controlling man. That's he has an over-inflated ego where he has too much energy in his solar plexus, which is the energy of his powerhouse. And it's overinflated, but it's actually from a place of weakness to compensate, which is a lot of men in the bodybuilding industry as well, right? Reflection, what's happening within. Or their solar plexus, their powerhouse, has lost energy and they become completely suppressed and weak and reserved from their emotions, right? And this is how women tend to attract these kinds of guys. And then the relationship is then just a direct reflection. It's a mirror of what's actually happening within both of them, right? I've been in relationships before where, I had this like ball busting, controlling woman that actually made me step even further out of my masculine, disconnect even more from myself. And knowing what I know now, recognizing this, if you're in a relationship now, every trigger, everything that is reflected back to you is an invitation to go within. Yeah.
100%. And I've been through journeys like that too, because I think I definitely had a strong masculine shield and I showed up that way in relationships as well. And it just ruins the dynamic. Like you said, it's the opposites or the polarities attract, like a magnet, right? And it's like, if you're showing up in that masculine energy in a relationship, like as a woman, well, of course you're going to push the man further into the feminine, because that's just what happens. Like, they move together. And I guess, like, I'd love to know what you think about how does a woman who does spend a lot of time in masculine energy through work, training, whatever it is, how do they learn to show up more as their true feminine self that they are at their core?
Yeah, the $1 million question. As I said, it's about coming back into balance. And first and foremost, whether you're a man or a woman, it's about discovering who you are at your core energetically. And the more you start uncovering the trauma, the conditioning, the programming, the belief systems, you start uncovering that, you start revealing your true essence. In relationships, you start becoming less attracted to things that you were attracted to. And same within business. You start becoming less driven towards the things that you once were driven towards that were actually coming from a wounded place. And now you get to be more inspired and driven towards something that's more true to you. So it's not about just completely letting your hands off the wheel and surrendering completely into your feminine. Like, we need balance. For that to be the waterfall, you need the structure of the masculine and you need the flow of the water. So it's both. And it's staying connected to your heart while doing so. This is the thing. It's, as a woman especially, how can you stay in your body, stay connected to your heart while you're getting shit done? While you're hustling, while you're grinding, while you're working, while you're training. It's a practice of mine. In between clients, I will connect in with my heart. I will do things to bring the energy back to me, to do it from a place of truth instead of a place of needing to prove or be perceived a certain way or whatnot. So this is what I call feminine leadership. And the trait of leadership, direction, assertiveness, vision, clarity, is the masculine. loving, nurturing, soft flow energy is the feminine. So feminine leadership is having that leadership, that direction, that vision, that clarity within yourself to create space for flow, to create space and direction for that expression of energy, right? So it's using the both of them. And this is the most powerful thing that I've really helped women navigate, is that, and I can say 99% of the women that I've enrolled into the work that I do, they've all told me how tired and exhausted they are of holding this masculine shield. They just want to relax into their feminine and be in more flow and be more creative. But normally they're like, yeah, like I want this, but I need to make money. If I just relax into my feminine, then it's like that thing, from what places are being driven by. And it's when you heal the pain that's there, that's making you hold this protection up, you then get to be driven, lead, create from a place that's more true. And when we look at the scale of consciousness, the vibrational frequency of consciousness, if you're listening to this, go look up the Hawkins scale of consciousness, and you'll see emotions have a vibrational calibration to them. Shame, fear, guilt, apathy, pride, anger is all very low frequencies. This is where majority of the population are living from. And they directly relate to the energy centers of the body as well. But most people are living here, and they're doing life from here, and they're driven from here. And Hawkins, that created this scale, also wrote a book called Power versus Force. And living from these lower frequencies is you're forcing to make things happen from a negative energy, from a false energy. When we move past courage into acceptance, into love, we move into power. Things become more easy, become more flow, and you have more energy. And you're doing it from a place of inspiration instead of desperation. And when I really shifted this, healed the wounds that were keeping me in those lower energy centers and those lower vibrational frequencies, when I healed what was keeping me there, where I could get to a place of courage, acceptance, willingness, and love, it's like I never worked a day in my life since, right? There's just been so much ease and so much more flow. Yeah, I still have hard days, challenging days. I still push through, still, have those days I'm heavily in my head, in my masculine. But I have the awareness to bring myself back to my heart. And that there is like my income has been a direct reflection of that. And this is why I like to use figures as an example. When I was forcing things to happen, living from those lower vibrational frequencies, not only were my relationships really shit, my income was really shit too. $3,000 to $5,000 a month. And the more I healed the little boy within, if you've heard the quote, heal the boy and the man appears. The more I healed the little boy, overcome those emotional limitations, allow myself to actually feel the pain, the grief, the suffering that was there, that this little boy took on, that then experienced a whole lifetime of these emotions. The more I let go of that, the more my life, as I said, was a direct reflection of what was happening within. And I legit, within a period of a year, when I really, really went deep in, I went from 3 to 5K per month to 20 to 30K per month in my business consistently. And I share those figures is because that's a direct reflection of what's happening within. And I also share that as well for people to understand that letting go of these painful emotions that have been most people's drivers, there's a far greater, more powerful emotion that's there that's going to get you far further than those lower vibrational frequency and emotions. Yeah. Yeah.
I love the working from a place of inspiration, not desperation. I love that. And I feel like people can feel that as well. And that's probably why you are more successful now that you've learnt to work from that place of inspiration instead of desperation, because I think people can feel that energy inside you.
Yeah, I that's probably like in terms of an explanation of being able to keep both sides, it's probably the most easily digestible way that I personally have heard it. Because I know that like in our previous masculine feminine episode, something that I expressed is like the messaging out there around this kind of dynamic I have always heard, and whether that's how it is being preached or not, it's just been my interpretation, is that like in order for me to attract the partner that I want, which is, you know, a supportive like masculine figure, I need to change the way that I am, because I interpreted it as like, okay, well, if I want to be hardworking and driven and ambitious and do all of the things that I identify with, even when driven from a better place, not a painful place, that is going to repel the person that I am saying that I want. And I didn't kind of know how to like navigate that, I guess. I was like, okay, cool. I've either got to make a choice to like continue to maybe attract people that I don't want, or change who I am to attract the person that I do want. Both sound shit to me. But I guess like the way that you're saying it is that like it can almost show up in exactly the same way from the outside, right? It's like you can still do all of the things and only I know like where it's being driven from. Do you get that like pushback, or like, I guess like what's your take on what I've just said in terms of like me having to change the way that I am? Is it possible to attract that kind of partner while still being this like driven, ambitious, living that kind of life?
Yeah. Look, I think what's most important here is healing the emotions that have been the driver for majority of your life that's energetically made you picked up this shield, right? And only you'll be able to experience whether or not what you're doing within the physical world is in alignment with who you are at your core. But it's discovering who you are at your core first. And it's also having acceptance as to who you've been, because it's not necessarily about changing who you are, but it's more about accepting the parts of yourself that you once deemed unacceptable. And the more you accept who you are at your core, the more you come back to who you truly are. And in that, you kind of transform in itself, if that makes sense. So yeah, absolutely. Like you can like do whatever lights you up at your core, as long as it's coming from the right place. Yeah. And I feel that only you'll know that once you truly go in and connect with that. Yeah.
I think that's good advice. And lastly, I think as we wrap up this podcast, we've spoken a lot about how this comes from your inner child wounds and your past traumas that happened. I think it's generally before 7 years old where we experience most of those. So what would you say to someone who is kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm showing up this way, but I don't know what my childhood wounds are. Like, how do they find and discover them to put them in a position to start working on healing them?
Also just want to note as well, so our integration or our relationship with the masculine and feminine energy is based on the childhood wounds that we have, but most of all the experience and representation and role models we had of the masculine and feminine energy growing up. And normally our first experience of that is mother and father. So it tends to come back to childhood wounds, but it can also be what you experienced at school, what you watched on TV. You know, people that watched The Simpsons growing up experienced they watched this role model of what it meant to be a man and a woman, right? Masculine and feminine. But to really tune into the childhood wounds that are at play is there is no separation between the little 5-year-old boy or girl and who you are today. I was a little boy walking around in a grown-ass man's body for the longest time. And the more we go back in and heal the little boy, we're not physically going back and healing this little boy. We're not going back in time. We're actually connecting with the parts of ourselves in the moment and healing those parts that are showing up today. And once we go back and heal those parts, we recognize that who we decided to be at 4 years old and what we experienced at 4 years old is also what's happening within our world right now as well. So the best way to begin to take a look at this is what's happening within your current world. What do you keep experiencing in relationships? What keeps showing up time and time again? What patterns keep revealing themselves? What are the core feelings and emotions that you continuously feel about yourself or avoid from feeling? When we start looking at these, then we can go into the root cause of where it came from and when you decided to step away from yourself. That's where I start with most people, because we are in a direct relationship with today and who we were as a little boy or a little girl. And who we were then, we're in a direct relationship with who we are today. There's no separation at all. Because who we decided to be back then is the decisions that we make moment to moment today. And the decisions we make today dictate the life that we create for ourselves. So when we go back into the past and heal the past and navigate the past, then we bring more awareness to the present moment. When we have more awareness in the present moment, we can make different decisions, lead from a different place, and therefore create a different reality and different future. So to answer your question, it's looking at what's happening within your world right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there also a resource that you would recommend someone to, I guess, look at in terms of starting to understand how childhood wounds could show up? Because I think a lot of people won't realize that their patterns in adulthood are reflective of childhood wounds. And I know for me, the first time that I became aware of how I was actually connected to my childhood was when I read a book called How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LaPera. I'm sure you've probably read that one. And I think I've referenced it about 4 times in this podcast now. So if our readers haven't read
charging
it,
her for
guys,
book sales.
literally,
Yeah.
I want royalties.
Yeah.
So I think, is there a resource that you'd recommend to people to kind of go and look at in terms of discovering more about that?
Yeah. What comes up for me is there's many resources. I feel one of the biggest pain points people experience in life is relationships. So I feel understanding your attachment style and how that was developed and where that came from. That's a beautiful
love an
start.
attachment style
Yeah.
chat.
So,
Yeah.
Yes.
the most powerful book I've ever read on attachment styles is called Anxiously Attached.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't
I've
read
read
that one, but I've
Attached.
read Attached.
I recommended it.
Who's
as
that
to a
by?
client.
I can't remember.
I've got no idea. I recommend that. Attached is my version of your How to Do the Work.
Yeah.
I recommend it to like everyone.
Yeah, it's incredible.
On the just quickly on the like inner child stuff, because going back to my childhood, it came from me looking at relationships, being like, why do I keep doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And I know that the first kind of like coach I worked with, when we were talking about childhood stuff, I was very dismissive initially, because I was like, can't be my childhood. Family was great, like that kind of thing. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people may experience, being like, because we hear like inner child or wounds or trauma, whatever. And it's like, well, I didn't have anything like catastrophic happen. You know, my parents were always very encouraging, gave me everything I needed, that kind of stuff. So I guess like something, or like a point that I just wanted to quickly make from like a personal experience point of view, is that like, you don't necessarily have to say that your parents were bad or you had a terrible childhood in order to look back and be curious enough to try and understand that perhaps like maybe things back there do have led to like behavior cycles now. Because I still like would say that my childhood was fantastic, for the most part. But there were still things, and as you said, like meaning that I gave to things that then showed up later in life. So I think just like going back with that sense of curiosity rather than like looking back trying to find something catastrophic.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with the word trauma.
Trauma, yeah.
But that's just what it's been labeled
Yeah.
in psychology, I suppose. But it's more just experience and patterning.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for, and role modeling, I suppose, as well.
A trauma definition that I heard, I can't remember who said it, that helped, or I thought was a really great explanation, was just like something that happened in your past that then permanently changed the way that you did things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, like a car crash or violence or anything like that. Yeah. It's just like that perhaps you attributed meaning to something from your past that then changed the trajectory of your behavior.
Yeah. On that as well, I just want to mention that the ego will do everything in its power to protect actually going there and feeling, we'll do everything in our power to avoid feeling pain. So the mind will actually shut out memories.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed for myself especially is, I thought the same thing as well. And the deepest trauma that I've had to move through was the grief of not receiving consistent love and nurturing from my mum and dad not being as present. I then decided to do whatever I needed to do in my power to get attention. And I didn't feel worthy enough of being loved. So I became, and doing that, I became the biggest people pleaser, right? People pleasing is a form of trauma. And I became the biggest people pleaser, and I protected my parents as well. And I'm not saying, I love my family to bits. And I will honor that I had an experience as a 5-year-old little boy and moving forward as well. And by me honoring that I was having an experience, I'm actually validating the experience and allowing that experience to be heard and seen for the first time. This is what I feel a lot of people pleasers block out. They spend a lot of their life trying to protect people instead of actually just being real with what they were actually experiencing. Yeah. So that's trauma in itself as well.
Yeah, like our parents are just people.
Yeah.
I think like the further I get into adulthood, the more I realize that it's like you can both accept and recognize that like they did the best that they could
With their own trauma.
Yeah. Like
Literally.
I heard something the other day. It was like your parents are also doing life for the first time.
yeah, I love that because I think we hold them, especially like at a young age. It's like they know everything, or like I used to look at them being like, oh, one day I'll get that figured out. Then you get here and you're like, oh, no one knows what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And majority of the time, they're not trying to have a harmful impact on
Yeah.
us. Like they want the best for us, but they're just navigating their own shit too.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
didn't have a podcast like this to listen
No.
to either. And my dad shared that with me. You know, he's broke down in front of me. He was like, I wanted to give you the apps, like everything I never had. And I never had what you have access to now. And I wish I had that because then I could have been better. And it's not about that, but it's more about doing this work is we are actually changing generational trauma, right? I am the one that is changing it for my parents. I have taken on their wounds in relationships and it's been deeply painful. So the grief that I've been feeling and processing was not only mine, but also theirs, and changing it for future generations, not just myself, but people all over the world. So yeah, blessed to be doing this work. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that people are talking about this more now. So we've obviously given some resources around like books and things that you can have a look at if you are interested in kind of getting to understand this space and how it may be showing up for you a little bit more. But also, obviously, a great way to kind of delve into these areas is to work alongside a coach. So obviously, Ryan, I'm sure you help people to discover these sorts of things and like wounds and patterning within themselves. So where can people find more about you if they want to learn more about this and your coaching?
Yeah, for sure. Instagram and Facebook is my main platform. So just Ryan Moresby-White, Instagram, Facebook. I post a lot of content and feel free to message, ask any questions. I'm an open book. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will link that all in the show notes. So thank you everyone for listening today. We hope you enjoyed that very insightful episode, and thank you so much for joining us, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome.